Abandoned, but not forgotten. Neglected, yet known the world over. Sites made famous by global icons.
It was here where someone truly became known as the greatest.
Where the repressed took a stand for justice.
It's not just a place of infamy, but a place of regeneration and reconciliation.
Where leaders inspired generations to follow.
When you know who spoke here, you feel a certain weight of history.
Where revered heroes revealed their darker sides.
It was whispered that men practiced all manner of black magic and satanic rites in these caves.
Whether championed or condemned, they've left a lasting legacy. These are the top 5 abandoned haunts of heroes and villains. Decaying relics. Ruins of lost worlds. Sites haunted by the past. Their secrets waiting to be revealed. At number 5, in the Democratic Republic of the Congo are the remains of an outlandish legacy.
At the entrance of this complex is this really peculiar-looking Chinese pagoda. Whoever originally created this obviously did so at great expense.
There's also a more stately building, and you wonder whether it was commissioned and built to house very important visitors.
Nearby, in the country's capital, Kinshasa, stands a rundown stadium that once grabbed the world's attention.
This site, in the heart of tropical Africa, one of the greatest sports heroes of the 20th century, took center stage.
What worldwide spectacle connects the heroic gladiators who fought here to one of Africa's most despotic leaders? Kazula bin Kadolo has worked here since the 1970s.
Maintenant, c'est très sale parce que c'est inhabité. Quand il y avait l'habitation, c'était propre. Maintenant, c'est inhabité, c'est pourquoi c'est très sale.
This grand edifice was built by a man who seized power in 1965, just 5 years after the Congo broke from colonial rule. His name was Joseph Desire Mobutu.
Coming out of the chaos of the post-colonial era arose this new country with a new name, Zaire, and a new leader, Mobutu, who at first seemed like a very inspiring man of the people.
Mabutu was determined to bring his newly independent country of Zaire to global attention.
To his people, Mobutu was a savior of sorts. He was supposed to help them and guide them on this new path, but it wouldn't be long before their opinions of him would change.
Mobutu was a man who would stop at nothing to keep power. And the first signs of his increasing megalomania are scattered around this site.
He wanted a conference center, housing blocks. Foreign dignitaries were going to come from all over. He even had a 4-lane highway built to it from the airport.
Mais il est père de la nation. Il ne doit pas faire quelque chose. Il doit faire toutes choses à une grande quantité.
This is Nazela Palace, Mobutu's presidential domain. Covering almost 2,000 acres, the compound is overlooked by a magnificent pagoda, allegedly paid for by the Chinese.
He has a certain type of politics of non-alignment where he really is just looking to attract resources to Zaire, and he's not really caring where it's coming from.
Mobutu lured VIPs from all over the world with the luxuries on offer at this bizarre retreat. But he also presented himself as a man of the people.
Dans la fête de Noël de bonne année, on venait tous ici, le président invitait les travailleurs pour se réjouir ensemble avec les travailleurs.
What was meant to be a show of power and wealth and tremendous natural resources and beauty actually disguised things that were far more terrifying.
Behind the scenes, Mobutu was said to be committing atrocities such as rape and torture. But he still wanted to attract international attention. In 1974, Mobutu hatched a plan to use a fallen sports hero to do just that. And his now abandoned presidential domain would provide the perfect facade to pursue his ambition.
He came up with a perfect idea for an event that could do just that, that would really draw the eyes of the world onto Zaire.
Mobutu found what he wanted in an unexpected arena, the world of heavyweight boxing.
When it was announced that Muhammad Ali and George Foreman were going to fight, Mobutu stepped forward, volunteering the country of Zaire.
The people's president stopped at nothing to get what he wanted.
Despite the fact that people throughout Zaire were starving, each of the fighters was going to get paid $5 million. Mobutu cared far more about how Zaire was perceived by the West than he did about the sufferings of his own people.
It's going to be a big surprise, this fight. Big surprise, big shock. I'll be declared as the greatest of all times. Listen.
The name they came up with for the fight was the Rumble in the Jungle.
Mobutu ensured his compound would be fit for a king, and he invited both Ali and Foreman to dine with him in this palace. The boxers lived and trained in buildings at the edge of the compound, where the press were invited to watch them prepare for the fight.
Les athlètes, comme les boxeurs, restaient de l'autre côté, à la colline là-bas. À la colline.
They worked hard every day to be ready for this titanic contest.
The people of Zaire adored Muhammad Ali for his love of Africa.
I fight in Africa because I'm fighting in my homeland. America's not my original homeland. My original homeland is Africa.
But back in the US, Ali had fallen from grace.
Many people had loved Muhammad Ali because of his skill in the boxing ring and his bravado.
But he was also villainized by some for his outspoken ways, for his resistance to the Vietnam draft, and for his association with the Nation of Islam.
This fight is really important for Ali because it's a chance for redemption, quite literally.
But at 7 years younger, George Foreman was a formidable opponent and the favorite to win. Muhammad Ali was having none of it.
Only last week, I murdered a rock, injured a stone, hospitalized a brick. I'm so mean I make medicine sick. Bad.
Then, things took a dramatic turn.
During training, George Foreman gets a horrible cut above his eye. The bout cannot happen until that cut heals.
Mobutu refused to let Foreman leave the country for treatment. He was worried that once he left, he'd never return.
The compound was teeming with the world's press, and Mobutu ensured he controlled what they saw. And with the fight fast approaching, his efforts extended beyond its walls. The contest would take place in the capital's largest stadium. Mobutu was determined to show his country as a crime-free paradise. He sent a gruesome warning to its criminals to ensure no foreigners were attacked while the world's press was watching.
He rounds up 1,000 criminals. They're housed in the bowels of the stadium. And then 100 of them are selected and executed randomly.
The boxers and the press were unaware of Mobutu's brutality below the very stadium where the fight would soon take place.
On the night of October 30th, 1974, the two men met in the ring at 4:30 a.m.
Mobutu himself actually didn't attend the fight because he was afraid that he might be assassinated in public.
Ex-boxer Kadima Ibrahim was there. Along with most of the 60,000-strong crowd, he was rooting for Ali.
Le leader qui était Mohamed Ali. Les gens chantaient toujours Mohamed, Boumouye, Mohamed, Boumouye. Bon, pour que Mohamed puisse les tuer en notre langue. Mohamed, Boumouye. Hein? C'est ça la joie des supporters.
A global TV audience of almost 1 billion watched as the bell rang out and the two titans collided.
Le combat a commencé. Premier round, bon, Mohamed Ali ne faisait que se couvrir, jeter un peu de jabs là, que Foreman cherchait toujours à les faire tomber par des coups secs.
Ali called that strategy rope-a-dope. He didn't look like he was really fighting. He was just allowing himself to get pummeled.
For 7 punishing rounds, Ali absorbed Foreman's murderous barrages. Having been on the ropes for most of the match, he looked set to lose. But by round 8, Foreman was tiring. Ali seized his chance.
Il est arrivé un moment où Mohamed Ali avait décidé de terminer le combat. Il a commencé à asséner des coups sur Foreman. Il a suivi avec des coups pour lui donner le coup qui a terminé le combat. Droite sec. Hein? Foreman est tombé. Alors, l'arbitre a arrêté le combat. C'était...
Victory here changed everything for Muhammad Ali.
After this fight, Ali was seen as an American champion. He had been despised and loathed through much of the 60s, but suddenly he was a victor for the American people, and he was even invited to the White House.
Back in the Congo, in 1997, Mobutu was finally overthrown and his palace ransacked in the ensuing chaos. He fled the country, taking millions of dollars with him. Today, the shattered presidential domain and shabby stadium are fitting monuments to Joseph Mobutu's corrupt rule. But these buildings will always be associated with Muhammad Ali's sporting greatness.
This is a site that epitomizes the contrast of history. On one side, you have a terrible villain, a person guilty of tremendous crimes. And on the other side, you have a hero, a man who stood up for his principles and who fought one way or another every day of his life.
At number 4, a depraved subterranean world that attracted a man known as the first American.
There's this incredible Gothic entrance, but you end up in these sinister-looking caves.
Dark chambers with heavy metal gates, almost like cells, are hidden away.
Here, just 60 miles from London, an elite group gathered to indulge in dark arts and to perform scandalous pagan rituals.
It is a place of legend, world famous for the debauched gatherings that took place here.
There was one very famous American who was prepared to travel a rather long way to join the party.
What stories make these caves so infamous? And how would one of America's founding fathers become embroiled in the controversy? The origins of these subterranean passageways date back to the mid-1700s. Jack Orr is a historian at the site.
These caves go a quarter of a mile underground, and it's completely 100% man-made.
This underground warren is known as the Hellfire Caves, home to one of the most secretive societies in British history.
The Hellfire Club was made up of some of the most famous and respected men of the age. It was whispered that men practiced all manner of black magic and satanic rites in these caves.
It wasn't just dark satanic worship. They also knew how to party.
Women were brought in from London to join the frolics dressed as nuns, and comely local nymphs were hired and allegedly laid out on altars so men could lick holy wine from their navels.
In the Hellfire Club's days, there would have been curtains across and beds inside this chamber. If you look at the back wall, we still have the original tally marks from where the men were keeping score when they took their prostitutes inside here.
The exclusive club even attracted one of the most eminent men from across the Atlantic.
Benjamin Franklin, one of the founding fathers of the United States, would frequently visit the UK, and when he did, he would attend these scandalous parties deep underground.
Franklin loved the fun, prankish nature of the club that he found here. He often wrote home to his friends in Philadelphia about the club.
Word of the nefarious activities of these powerful men soon leaked out into the wider world.
The public outrage took its toll, so in 1766 the club was closed down.
With all his talk of virtue, Franklin's association with these caves was hidden from view, but the Hellfire Club left an indelible mark.
Because of the dark, debaucherous history of the Hellfire Club, they have left this lingering legacy behind, and now we are meant to be one of the most haunted sites in all of England.
At number 3, in Johannesburg, South Africa, is an eerie facility that once caged a world-changing hero.
If these high, thick walls could talk, they would talk of injustice.
You get a really foreboding sense as you enter into it to really wonder what went on in this site.
Divided into 3 sinister compounds, each of these areas has a distinct character.
It's bleak and threatening and designed to be soul-destroying.
This is an imposing edifice, a visible symbol of oppression.
There are watchtowers, there's heavy barbed wire, and there's bolted doors.
But those who were once trapped here would go on to symbolize freedom itself.
It's not just a place of infamy, but a place of regeneration and reconciliation.
So what happened inside these ominous walls? And how did it take one man from villain to the world's most revered hero? This is Constitution Hill, a complex of notorious prisons. Sibongile Mukbela was once incarcerated here.
It's very difficult today to tell you what would happen in these courtyards and the cruelty. Because I think to a large extent the brain kind of shafts it off, otherwise you wouldn't survive.
Constitution Hill enforced a system of strict racial segregation.
It's strange that as I come back now, I still feel the anger, the unfairness. This is a place where so many women were held here. They would become criminals purely because they were in wrong color, and they were criminalized for who they are. There must have been over 60, 70 women, all on top of each other in one small place that was not even properly ventilated. I could hear their noise, I could hear their pain, I could feel them.
The first prison was built here in 1893, but Sibongile and many of her fellow inmates were victims of racist laws brought in many years later. It was known as apartheid.
It defined a system of segregation in this country that extended itself to education and hospitals and even beaches.
The system of apartheid that was created was thorough, it was total, it was complete. It was absolutely complete.
The black South African woke up to find himself a stranger in the land of his birth.
And so we're going to see a massive influx of these people in these prisons.
Today, Dawn Robertson runs this 100-acre site, which the apartheid system turned into a place of terror and humiliation.
So this prison complex is really a microcosm of South Africa in terms of our history.
The prisons were segregated along apartheid lines. The buildings of the old fort held white male prisoners. Prison number 4, black male prisoners. While women, segregated inside the building, were held in the specially built women's block. The infamous South African police trawled the city's impoverished townships, hunting down those breaking the country's racist laws.
The people from the townships would have driven through this tunnel, this door would have been opened up, and they would have been brought into this space. They wouldn't know where they were, it was in absolute pitch blackness, and the only light they would actually see would be the lights that came out of these little turrets. And on the other side of these turrets would be wardens with guns.
Ahead of them lay an uncertain fate.
So now we are in number 4 prison, which is probably the most notorious prison in South Africa. This is the black male prison.
In the 1960s, with apartheid brutally in force, this place was packed.
Number 4 was designed to hold 997 prisoners when it held over 2,000. And so you can get a sense of how overcrowded it was.
Conditions in number 4 were appalling, but the most horrific punishments were carried out in the prison's hospital.
The law stated that you could not lash anybody without the district surgeon being present, and the district surgeon would have had his offices up here, so the lashing room was up here. It was this place where, you know, you would be lashed and tortured.
This is a space that is cruel, it's terrifying, and it's traumatizing.
Many were flung in prison number 4 for contravening an apartheid policy called the Pass Laws.
The Pass Laws severely limited the movement of black South Africans.
This was a legacy of the slavery period. Anyone caught without their pass book could be immediately imprisoned. And where better place to imprison them than behind the thick, high walls of Constitution Hill.
And by far the most famous person to be held here was Nelson Mandela.
Nelson Mandela is a key activist. He becomes very prominent in the 1940s.
He advocated peaceful resistance against the National Party's racist laws.
Mandela's policy of non-violence shifted following the barbarous Sharpeville massacre.
On March 21st, 1960, in front of the Sharpeville police station, you had around 7,000 Black South Africans who were meeting and amassing.
Police forces responded to a demonstration with a hail of submachine gun fire.
You could just see dozens of bodies on the ground. And these people were shot in the back as they were running, they were fleeing, and these were peaceful protesters.
In response to this, Mandela publicly burned his pass. Thousands followed, marching to police stations, burning their passes.
1962. Nelson Mandela was arrested and brought through the forbidding gates of Constitution Hill.
Mandela was not taken down to the number 4 prison where other black male prisoners were held. He was rather held up here in the old fort, which is a white male prison.
They didn't want him to serve as a model or an inspiration to other prisoners.
So this is the courtyard off Mandela's cell where he was held. On the right here is an old hospital ward, and this was the place where Mandela was held. He talks about the fact that the guard actually gave him a hospital bed.
In 1964, Mandela was sentenced to life in prison. He would not see freedom again for 26 years. Nelson Mandela was finally released in 1990, by which time South Africa was a very different place. And 4 years later, he was elected president in the country's first multiracial election.
Mandela is the father of our nation. The fact that he was incarcerated here is significant. Not many people realize that, this was a very, very significant space for him.
While president, Mandela oversaw plans to turn this site, once known for its notorious injustices, into the new Constitutional Court of South Africa.
It symbolized everything that we'd been through as a nation, because that's the place of the worst indignity that this country has suffered, but it's going to be the place of hope.
At number 2, in Brazil, deep in the Amazon rainforest, is a utopian dream frozen in time. An American-style water tower dominates the landscape. And the buildings here wouldn't look out of place in a Midwestern town. But why build this remote outpost at all? The roots of this town can be traced back to the technological revolution at the dawn of the 20th century, and a giant of American industry, Henry Ford. Ford's expansion of the motor industry was hampered by a global monopoly on the rubber he needed for his tires. His answer to the problem was this: Fordlandia.
The purpose of building the town there would be to create a rubber tree plantation in which a large concentration of rubber trees could be cultivated and farmed as a cheap source of rubber for tires.
In 1928, Ford began his ambitious plan to create the largest rubber plantation in the world.
Só era galpão onde era a fábrica, onde era a serraria, onde era a oficina. O grupo gerador para da energia para a vila. Então isso aqui era centro nervoso do projeto.
The facilities at Fordlandia were unprecedented. But Henry Ford's insistence on a puritanical Midwestern lifestyle didn't go down well.
They were not allowed to drink alcohol. They were expected to garden, attend regular square dances, eat specific food, completely alien to the people that were living in Fordlandia.
Era uma disciplina militar. Aqui tudo era, tipo assim, rígido. Era uma disciplina muito rígida.
Ford's dream quickly became a repressive nightmare for the town's residents. And in 1930, it reached boiling point. The workers rebelled, and the Brazilian army had to be brought in to restore the peace.
The people of Fordlandia just refused to live in such a fashion that was so strict and draconian.
Ford's bid to industrialize the biological world fared little better. Packed unnaturally close together in plantations, disease spread rapidly through the rubber trees. But Ford's high hopes for Fordlandia finally came crashing down when synthetic rubber flooded the market. In 1945, Fordlandia was sold back to the Brazilian government. Its sawmill, hospital, houses and streets were abandoned. For all of Henry Ford's $20 million investment, virtually no rubber was produced. At number 1, in Oakland, California, a forgotten gem that holds traces of a conflicted American hero.
In the midst of Oakland's urban sprawl is this massive white building.
It's this huge, hulking structure, almost like a giant concrete aircraft hangar.
At first, you might mistake it for a warehouse, but it's too ornate for that.
This is maybe a stadium of some sort, but it seems pretty highbrow for a stadium. There's definitely elements of neoclassical architecture here.
Once grand niches and statues are now surrounded by fencing, graffiti, and boarded-up entrances.
As ornate as the outside is, the inside is in total disrepair. It looks like it's been abandoned for years, possibly even decades.
You can see seats that are still intact, but you can see also trash in other places. You can see signs of a very recent fire, that it's been vandalized and broken into.
And given the scale of this place, you have to think that there were some pretty iconic figures who must have spoken to an audience this large.
The atmosphere in the whole arena was live at all times. It was like electricity here.
Heroes to some, villains to others. In a fight that started as a stand against police brutality, a group of revolutionaries took center stage here and shook American society to its core. Historian Billy Jennings first came here in the 1960s to see the godfather of soul.
Nobody had a ticket. And so we decided we were going to jump the turnstile. We were dodging security, and we found empty seats.
Billy would return to this arena many times, but he was no longer dodging security. He was the security for an organization that would take Oakland by storm. And its roots were sowed here, in this arena. It opened in 1915 as the Oakland Auditorium, but it wasn't long before this gathering place brought the city's racial divisions into sharp focus.
In the 1920s, it actually hosted a massive Ku Klux Klan rally.
At this rally, Klan's members came together for a ceremonial cross burning.
During the Second World War, Oakland's burgeoning shipyards drew an influx of African Americans from the South. And in the racially charged years of the 1960s, tensions between Oakland's predominantly white police force and its black population were sky high. So when one of America's greatest orators took to this stage, his words fell on fertile ground.
In late 1962, Martin Luther King gave a speech there commemorating the 100th anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation. Part of his speech was addressing the need to boycott local companies that refused to hire people of color.
King's focus that day was Wonder Bread, one of America's most famous food brands.
King was an incredible public speaker. He really knew how to engage his audience, but he also knew how to turn a phrase, and he had a good sense of humor. And what he said was, "We're gonna make Wonder Bread wonder where the money went."
The speech had a dramatic impact on one young man sitting in the audience that day. His name was Bobby Seale. But Seale would take a less mainstream view than King, and he used this stage to deliver a revolutionary message. And this passionate firebrand would soon earn the unwelcome attention of the FBI.
Seale was very moved by King's words, but he took that message in a different direction. And a few years later, he would found the revolutionary group, the Black Panthers, which was headquartered in Oakland.
That moment, that speech, that space, he himself, Seale himself, acknowledged was absolutely foundational and instrumental in his own emergence as an activist.
In 1966, Bobby Seale founded the Black Panthers with college friend Huey Newton to tackle the issue of police brutality. Following the killing of an unarmed black man in the Bay Area, they decided to take matters into their own hands.
At its core, the Black Panther Party advocated freedom by any means necessary.
So they're carrying guns in public, they're wearing leather, they're wearing berets, they're wearing black, they're wearing military boots.
Was their vision radical? Absolutely. Were the Black Panther Party members rightly accused of violent crimes? Yes, they were. But we have to remember that this is a time when beatings and extrajudicial murder of black people in America were an everyday experience.
The auditorium and this area of Oakland became the focal point for a new Black Power movement with the Panthers at its heart. But soon, Huey Newton was arrested for the shooting of a police officer, an allegation that was overturned 2 years later. In the meantime, in 1968, Bobby Seale and the Panthers descended on the auditorium to campaign for his release.
This room was more or less a dressing room, a green room for Bobby being back here in preparation of his speech.
Seale took to this now dilapidated stage and reiterated the Black Panthers manifesto.
Bobby Seale, bring him on.
Brothers and sisters, I want to tonight have the chance to tell you in large mass something about the organizing of a black people's party that dealt with black people's problems. We want an immediate end to police brutality and murder of black people.
That alignment on that stage right there kind of put this Oakland Auditorium on the map. That brought together an alignment of black leaders that America had never seen before. After that conference and during Huey's trial, the Black Panther Party enjoyed a tremendous growth. Like we went from 1 to 2 offices to 48 offices throughout America.
But with that growth came unwanted attention.
We had to be aware of provocateurs, we had to be aware of people starting trouble, and we had to be aware of undercover police coming in to start trouble, you know? So we had to be on our toes when we were down here.
J. Edgar Hoover, head of the FBI, wasted no time making the Panthers public enemy #1. And his counterintelligence program, or COINTELPRO, made the Panthers their #1 target.
COINTELPRO infiltrated a range of civil rights organizations, including mainstream ones like the Southern Christian Leadership Conference that King led. But they really went after the Panthers with a vengeance.
Seal was soon in court himself for the famous trial of the Chicago 7, on trumped-up charges of inciting a riot. And while in court, 2 fellow Panthers were assassinated by Hoover's henchmen. After Seal was released from the trial, the FBI had him charged with murder. Again, the charges were dropped, and Billy remembers Seal's triumphant return to this stage in 1971.
He came back to Oakland as a hero, and when he announced that he was going to run for mayor of Oakland, and took off his hat and threw it into the arena as a symbol of, I'm entering this race, that was chilling. People was electrified, you know, because it's one of theirs, somebody they knew is going to change the city. And the whole arena went crazy.
The party was starting to turn towards an embrace of electoral politics and doing voter registration drives.
Seal used the auditorium to focus on his work for the community.
On this stage, Bobby Seale, he asked everybody to get in a single file line, and we had Panthers lined up, maybe about 10 Panthers handing out bags of groceries to people. But at the same time, back here in this area, we had tables set up to register people to vote.
They tested for sickle cell anemia. They held workshops for young people known as Panther Cubs.
Seal narrowly lost his mayoral campaign, but his efforts brought about lasting change.
Next election, you had Asians running, you had Mexican Americans running, and you had women running. Bobby opened the door. A young girl who worked out of my office during the campaign, she's a House of Representatives right now.
However, splits in the party fostered by the FBI soon followed, and public support for the Panthers gradually declined. Just over a decade later, the party dissolved, and the Oakland Auditorium, later renamed the Kaiser Convention Center, experienced a similar decline. Today, the future of the Oakland Auditorium may be uncertain, but the Black Panthers' message has never been more relevant.
The difference between the Black Panther Party and Black Lives Matter is that we had a program. We're not just focused on the police department. We were dealing with hunger, health care, education. But we commend people in the Black Lives Matter for standing up and doing the right thing. All power to the people.